My guest tonight is making his first appearance on Crowdsource the Truth, but he's going to be known to many people. He is Vem Miller. Vem, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Great pleasure to be on your show.
It's good to meet you. Thanks for reaching out. You and I have never spoken before today, and of course I heard about you. It was maybe 2 years ago almost that you got jammed up in a Trump rally in, I believe, Riverside, California, where you were accused of being basically an almost assassin. But it seems like this was a fabricated story designed to smear and destroy you. And you now have had a lawsuit ongoing that's just gone up for appeal. Why don't you, first, for people who maybe haven't seen you before, fill us in on the background? Because I just heard little pieces about this. I don't even know the details of your story.
Yeah, so I don't know where to start with this one because it is a pretty intense story. But let me start with the false accusations firstly. Really, what happened there was, I've been in the Patriot movement for very actively since 2018. One of the things I specialize in is making documentaries and doing investigative journalistic pieces. I am from California, but in 2020, after all that COVID craziness went down, I was living in the arts district in downtown, and it just became too crazy. It became too prohibitive to do anything in Los Angeles, And so I decided I'm going to make a move to Nevada. And in this instance, in terms of the Trump rally, I was coming from Nevada. Now, the reason I was even in California is because on October 5th, 2024, I got a tip from a whistleblower about ballots that were being trafficked in truckloads starting from Tacoma, Washington, all through California, New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona. And in fact, these are the truckloads of ballots in California that President Trump announced on December 14, 2025. That was
Ah,
literally my investigation. So the
wow.
files I collected so on October 5th, 2024, I get in contact with one whistleblower that tells me, there's something very wrong on here. There's 150 semi trucks and trailers that are transporting ballots across state lines. 3 days later, I get in touch with another whistleblower that happens to be a friend of this whistleblower. And by the way, this is all available, the audio, I've changed the voices, but this is all available if you simply do a search of Motherlode, California. Just put in the words Motherlode, California. You'll see my ugly mug on there, and watch that 5-minute clip, which includes a lot of the evidence I gathered during that period, right? So I'm in California. Firstly, I go to the James O'Keefe premiere for Line in the Sand in Newport on October 8th. That night, I leave the after party, which is now October 9th, early morning, to travel to a place called Lubec, California, which is one of the two major truck stops where these 150 semi trucks and trailers filled with illegal ballots are supposed to be congregating. And I start collecting information, it was a pretty gnarly experience. And this is why I had my shotgun and my Glock 19 with me, legally purchased in Nevada. And it was in the back of my SUV, but I'm doing investigations, in literally middle of nowhere. Lubec is like a big truck stop. And just to be safe, I had my firearms with me. And like I said, they're lawful firearms purchased in Nevada. And I collect a lot of information, which you'll find in that piece, Motherlode, California, when you do a search. I've actually redacted some of the numbers and details of what I think are individuals that are criminals involved in that, allegedly. And so I collect that information the next morning, and now we're October 9. This is about 10:30 a.m. I call my friend at the Clark County Republican Party. He's the chairman of the Clark County Republican Party. And the reason why I'm connected there is because I ran for office in 2022 as a MAGA America First Republican. And my friend Jesse Law, who was the chairman of the Republican Party at that time, I have a close relationship with him. I say, hey, I heard about this Coachella Trump rally, which I had heard from friends, and could you get me a ticket? Well, I get sent 4 special entry passes via email, which are also available. You know, all this stuff. The 3 pieces I would reference are the Motherlode California piece, the third assassin.
Hang on real quick, because I'm looking for that and I can't find it. I just put into Google Motherlode, first LODE.
On X, dude. Search on X. Motherlode California. You'll see the thumbnail with my picture on there without glasses. So the 2 other pieces that are very important to watch, everything is evidence what I'm saying. I collect receipts, especially when I'm doing investigations and stuff. So the third assassin piece, which is pinned to my X profile at not Vem Miller, and the other piece that's very important to watch is called geriatric terrorism. And this kind of deal, those 3 pieces explain the before and the after of this whole third assassin hoax, right? So at this point, you know, I get the tickets to go to the Trump rally, and knowing that I have firearms and trying to be a good citizen, and away from the rally, 1.2 miles deal where you park your car, you got to get. You are not parking at the rally. You're parking 1.2 miles away from the right. So one of the big lies of Chad Bianco is that I track circumstances because every at least a mile away. I've been to probably 2 parking lot from McVeigh blow up every. Knowing this information, would be missions, right? So I drive up to the parking lot entrance, and before I even try to enter, and this is about 20 yards away from the entrance, and like I said, the geriatric terrorism piece clearly shows where these events occurred. I am on my own fruition drive up to a deputy that's 20 yards from the entrance. And I fortunately recorded this, Jason, because if I didn't record this, my life already has been pretty badly damaged and destroyed in many ways. But I think I would have been either dead or in prison, to be honest with you, if I didn't record this, because it would have been my word against the word of Sheriff Chad Bianco.
Wow. No, wait a minute. Can we see? I'm having a real hard time finding this Motherlode, California. I don't understand what's going on.
Okay, here, let me do a quick
And by
search.
the way, our broadcast just got cut. I recovered it. I think it's back on. But why is this all happening to you?
Frankly, I think I discovered the Motherlode, and it's been actually, you're right. Motherlode, ballot, fraud, California. It's changed. It was working. Oh my God, don't tell me they removed it. One sec.
Yeah,
let's try not Vem Miller, Motherlode, California. Yeah, I think part of this is, oh, here we go. Try not Vem Miller, Motherlode, California. It's the first thing that pops up. On mine, it's the first thing. Oh, try latest. Go on latest.
And is it Motherlode, one word,
no,
L-O-D?
L-O-A-D.
There we go. We got a special.
There we go.
Okay, there it is.
To find this thing, you know. The other piece is pinned to my profile, which is the Third Assassin documentary preview. And the other one, in fact, let me do a quick little search. Make sure, I'm trying to go with unique names because I learned from my business partner, Mindy Robinson, that's what helps you find it. She did the Route 91 documentary. Probably another reason why we're hated by the bad guys.
Well, you must know that Mindy and I have had nothing but conflicts over her use of my material and John Cullen's material in that video, right?
That I did not know, and that's to be honest with you, we operate. You know, we have a.
We'll talk about that at another time. But
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring her up, but since you did.
Yeah. I apologize that, whatever happened there. But so I'm doing a search right now for geriatric terrorism, right? When you look under geriatric terrorism, I hope
But
that.
just to back you up for a second, so basically, you discovered evidence of the election fraud that used to get people kicked off of YouTube for even talking about it. And obviously, this was a big deal, particularly at the time that Trump hadn't won yet, and you were trying to basically publicize evidence that now Trump is talking about as recently as a month ago.
Yeah.
And so this is why, because I mean, well, here I see you've got Patrick Byrne in this documentary. You seem to be friends with a lot of people that I don't like, but that's a separate issue. So, anyway, Bianco, obviously, if the guns are in the car a mile and a half away from where you are, that's the thing. I think even whatever kind of personal beefs I might have with people, it doesn't matter. The story that you're explaining, it didn't make sense on its face, because it's not like they found you stalking around the grounds of the thing with guns, trying to get up on the roof. You're trying to get in. I heard them say you had fake passes. I presume something about the downloaded passes is confusion, that they're trying to. I mean, I can tell when we're looking at Lawfare. And the thing I want to get to is you've got this lawsuit against the sheriff, the county. Like, this is rolling a boulder uphill. It's just been partially dismissed. The federal aspects have been dismissed, leaving your state claims to be reintroduced, dismissed without prejudice. Tell us what's happening through the lawsuits, and what are your prospects for getting this unwound?
Oh, obviously Chad Bianco's using this to attack me, but it's all false, because the way we proceeded with this lawsuit was to file it as a federal action with a lot of state cause of action, which include the really, I would say, the very powerful slander, defamation, tortuous conduct claims, because not only did Chad Bianco say a bunch of lies that I showed up with fake IDs, fake passports, fake entry passes. All those are lies, and they're lies on the surface, because these are federal offenses. And seeing as though how I was clearly being targeted, if they actually had any meat on the bones, something like fake passports, fake IDs, all claims that he made during his press conference and continues to make many months later, a lot of lies, all those things would have caused me to be actually charged, but I wasn't charged with anything. I was given a misdemeanor ticket, and I'm kind of fast forwarding here, but 16 months later, we've been to 7 hearings for the misdemeanor ticket. Every judge has begged us to dismiss it, to apply for a dismissal. Intentionally, we haven't dismissed it because we want to get the body cameras. And seven hearings later, Chad Bianco refuses to release the body cameras. And let me
How
tell
is
you,
he allowed to do that, though? I mean, isn't this your right to see that exculpatory evidence? And by the way, isn't this costing you a ton of money to lawyers and everything?
fortunately, when people saw what Chad Bianco did, including that he said, I made verbal statements, I am here to kill president, fill in the blanks, there was a lot of lawyers that were like, wow, this is the worst case of defamation we've ever seen in our life. So I was approached by a number of them. And that allows you to do things on contingency. Also, I've studied law too. I've studied a lot of law enough to. I mean, I'm in my 3rd settlement right now, and part of what we do is actually exposing corrupt judges. And I've actually helped to remove 4 judges thus far through lawsuits, through legal action, through notices. That's part of our brand, mediaassassins.com. And the reason it got, before it had no name, we just would expose bad people and file lawsuits and use video content to expose those people. Well, after I got called the 3rd assassin, this idea popped into my head of being a media assassin. So you see that Judge Freya Christensen, she's a goner. That lawyer right there, really bad player, she's a goner because we exposed her. There was no lawsuits involved in that one. The video exposure was enough. And then, there's a lot of individuals here that we're still working on. The guy on the left you're seeing down there, Matthew Harder, that's something that Steve Sanson, who's another warrior for our rights, actually worked with him, and he was successful in taking down this man. In fact, tragically, just as the heat was coming down on him, he decided to commit suicide.
Whoa.
Yeah, and these are bad players. You look at these kind of individuals. I mean, that's a family court judge that used to say, "I am God in court," steal people's children, cover up
Whoa.
child abuse, just really nasty stuff. And this is, we'll get back to talk about my Hollywood career and how I got to this point. But when I decided to transition from producing television in Hollywood around 2018, it was with this goal of seeing how badly things were corrupt. Part of it was also I was badly attacked in family law courts. With my children, I saw how no law exists in terms of how some of these family court judges conduct themselves. And that created a burning desire within me to go after them, to use media, to use my legal knowledge. I spent 3 years just teaching myself law enough where I could navigate the courts. Sometimes I work with paralegals and I work with the advice of professional lawyers. But, it's amazing what you learn when your back's against the wall and you realize how terrible things are. But, coming from at that time, I was producing reality television and documentary TV. Coming from that world, even though the money's a lot less, this is a lot more fruitful, exciting. I mean, we're actually making change happen. Made a name for myself enough where these truck drivers, when they realized what they were sitting on, they sought to speak with me as somebody that could help them. And so once I discovered by October 9th, I had all the receipts for this ballot trafficking. And by the way, Jason, as I'm doing searches, I think the best thing to do for people searching these pieces, because I think X is doing their damnness to bury this stuff. But if you search under at not Vem Miller, geriatric terrorism, you'll see one of the parts that's important to this. And pinned to my X profile is the original Third Assassin documentary preview, and between those three pieces you get a 360 view of what is happening, or what happened, and what is currently happening in terms of this Third Assassin hoax.
Wow. It's really something else. I mean, when they decide they want to mess with your life, it is incredibly disruptive. I don't think I've had it quite as badly as you have, but I've been jammed up in court for the past 9 years myself. So let's see, we've got at not Vem Miller. That's your, people can follow you there on X. Geriatric terrorism.
If you click on media, I'm curious if you click on media, if it'll be an easier find there. Oh my God, it's so bad, man. I mean, this stuff was appearing as of a week ago, but if you go to the top selection, I think you scroll down there, there's a Rumble link. Okay. So that's a short from it that you just passed. What's the best way, guys? Let me make it simple. Just go to americahappens.com. That's our little network that Mindy and I run, americahappens.com. And let's skip this whole, and truly, Jason, I mean, I was checking this a week ago and it was so much easier to find. It seems like they're really trying to bury this material. Apologies about, whatever's going on there with Mindy,
Yeah.
But here is, geriatric terrorism is the first one. The third one is the Third Assassin hoax documentary. That's a funny music video in the middle that I created mocking lying Chad Bianco. Actually kind of a cool EDM track. And then the Motherlode one is right there too. It's to the left right there. And so, those tell the story. But the long and short of it was that once I drove up to the deputies, luckily I was recording the audio, and you'll hear the audio recording on either of those pieces, at least excerpts enough to tell what happened. I just drove up to the deputies, said, "Hey, I'm from Nevada. I'm a Trump caucus captain. I'm a Trump team leader. I have a couple of firearms in the back of my SUV," and even offered for them to hold on to it for me to come pick it up later from the sheriff's station. And then I was told to pull over. I pulled over. Another deputy came. I repeated the same information. And again, that's all in any one of those three pieces. Then I was handcuffed because for their own safety, even though, this gun wasn't in my, the guns weren't within arm's reach. And what's also important to know is that these aren't assassination weapons. It's not like high-powered rifles like the 30-06 that they
Yeah.
claim was used to
Yeah.
kill
Can't assassinate somebody with
Charlie
a
Kirk. And by the
shotgun,
way,
really.
amazing work on.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, unless you're in close range, which I think the last time that happened was like World War One or something, you know. But so yeah, you know, I've been following your work, man, in terms of the theory that Charlie got hit from the behind, and what I do know is that is a perfect example of, you know, how they could create a story that doesn't make any sense. And my story obviously makes zero sense in terms of what Chad Bianco claimed, especially when you look at the evidence. But nonetheless, you know, it's been, you know, I got to tell you, man, if I didn't study law and if I didn't become a warrior by getting hit over and over again prior to this by this unequal justice system and these absolute vultures that seem to be running our government and courts, I'd be in a lot more of a pathetic state. But, you know, being a warrior, it's kind of like, hey, you know, you want to mess with me? I will file a lawsuit. If I can't get an attorney, then I will do it myself, you know? And so that's really been, knowledge has been liberating. Knowledge certainly has been liberating in order to fight these people.
No, wait a second.
And, you know, they try, like you're seeing how...
You just said if you can't get an attorney, and that's definitely one of the components of lawfare is that they want to, if you have money to get an attorney, they want to make you so publicly toxic that no attorney wants to take your case for fear that it might tarnish their reputation. I presume that's what happened with you because your case made national news all over the place.
Yeah, and I was fortunate because the slander, defamation, lies were so egregious that this was a lawyer, you know, a lawyer that does those kind of cases. It was their dream come true. I eventually decided to work with a gentleman by the name of Ethan Behrman. And his name is very appropriate because he is quite a bear of a man. He is courageous. He doesn't like this nonsense. Politically, you might look at us and say we're on different sides of the aisle. But to be honest with you, what I've realized is that Ethan and I have more in common and agree on almost everything politically, which has actually been enlightening because I started off as a MAGA first or MAGA America First Republican. Since then, certainly, you know, I've been quite disappointed by what I've seen because, you know, despite President Trump announcing the truckloads of ballot fraud, despite that being my investigation, no effort has been expended by anybody of consequence to say that, you know, President Trump initially said, look, that guy's no assassin. I mean, Roger Stone called him because I had worked with him on a JFK documentary about the assassination there. So enough people knew me where he got calls saying, look, this guy's a patriot. This is all wrong. Right. But on the continuation of that line of thought, right, you have Chad Bianco that 16 months later continues to lie, has weaponized his campaign against me. Every day I'm harassed, you know, sent insane messages by people, you know, including death threats and, you know, all kinds of stuff. Right. And I have been very disappointed, honestly, because I put blood into this game, trying to what I thought was saving this country, exposing a whole bunch of things, not just the ballot fraud. You know, I made documentaries about how Bureau of Land Management, BLM, was stealing land from American farmers in order to, you know, usher in the World Economic Forum agenda of having us eat lab-grown meats. So I've been, you know, I'm not a keyboard warrior. I actually, like you, I work. I put sweat into the game. And I thought that, hey, once President Trump became president, things were going to get better for a lot of us that are fighting, you know. And what I've actually realized is that a lot of those patriots that were putting the most into this situation were also the most ignored. And probably my expose of Susie Wiles back when, you know, 10 months before the election via Thomas Renz, the attorney who had investigated her and had a lot of questions, maybe has something to do with that. Maybe it's because we allowed a whistleblower interview who talked about Boris Epstein being suspect, which we're also the first to do like 10 months before the election, you know. So chances are I probably pissed off a lot of people, and that's prevented,
But
you know,
you're on
like
the money. You're on the money with
the,
this stuff. I think we have a little delay. Sorry to interrupt you there. You're on the money
you know,
with this stuff because Susie Wiles had a lobbying firm where Pam Bondi was employed, didn't she?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I've been on the money quite a bit. I've been on the money before months, sometimes years before other investigative journalists on certain topics. But I also realize, and I knew it back then, that that might involve some kind of punishment. And my hope was always that the good guys would recognize and defend me and do what's right. And there has been a lot of good guys out there, by the way. Unfortunately, they weren't invited into the halls of power when President Trump, became president. But there's a lot of people, and you guys watch the Third Assassin documentary preview, you'll see a lot of people vouching for me that are close enough to President Trump for him to actually know that, this is all nonsense. But what hasn't happened, and this is the dirty politics, is Chad Bianco claims he's a Republican. He's a Johnny-come-lately Republican that hopped on the bandwagon in 2024, late 2023, 2024. And because his maybe's running for office, this is part of the cover up, because the continuation of that story is that really Chad Bianco is a criminal that committed a federal crime, which is a federal crime to report false information to the FBI, punishable by 5 to 8 years. And you and I, Jason, if we had done the same, we'd be in jail for 5 to 8 years. But Chad Bianco now is, use the celebrity he built, because people don't remember that, oh my goodness, this clown really screwed up and got it all wrong, and this is not the person we should put into office. Instead, what's happened is he has gone very anti-Newsom, acting like he's a patriot. And as a result, he's gotten a lot of support and a lot of cover-up. Even though this man is an absolute vile scumbag. This man is a criminal, a scumbag. What he did to me was not a unique thing. He also kneeled for BLM, by the way, but he continues to lie about it. He's also, there's so much fraud, waste, and abuse in this man's past, which obviously once he called me an assassin, he became one of my investigations. And that investigation reveals a player that is as bad as Gavin Newsom, and I would even argue worse, because he's supposed to enforce law, not break the law. And I could give you a lot of examples in that regard. People aren't aware, but like the sheriff's department's in charge of building stuff, right? So let's say a toilet cost $100,000 to build. These guys were getting bids of $800,000. They had one guy working there that was actually an experienced contractor that was catching the fraud, waste, and abuse. Well, what does Chad Bianco do? He fires that guy. He puts a guy that has no idea about building. So these $800,000 bids go through when the toilet really costs $100,000. And guess what? Guess what happens there? Guess who pockets the change? You know what I mean? So, he's out there right now acting like he's the anti-Newsom. I got news for the viewers. We've done a deep dive in California. Everybody in California, with a few exceptions, is a Newsom, meaning they are getting rich out of. Could we cuss on this show, by the way?
Say whatever you want. No, say whatever you want.
He is fucking the people. He has been fucking the people for the last 7 years as a sheriff. He's enriched himself. And here's some other bullet points that are important for people to know in case they're, considering voting for this disaster of a human being, right? He makes $600,000 a year. He has a $1.1 billion budget. He has an 8% crime solving rate, meaning he fails 92% of the time. And thus far, the taxpayer has paid $100 million for his lawsuits because of his failure to train, because of his bad behavior, because he has these Yahoo cops running around. And by the way, Sheriff Stan, who was the prior sheriff, never had any such issues. He was driving around in $30,000 vehicles. Chad Bianco comes in, he decides to buy 100,000 vehicles for his executive staff. He decides to not buy $500 guns, which is what a normal handgun costs. He buys $4,000 guns. He starts using his helicopters to terrorize his opponents. And we have even videos on that where, like, let's say we had a kid that was passing out flyers against his campaign at one of his events on a public space. Well, his police officers terrorize this kid. Next thing you know, there's a helicopter on top of this kid's house. This is like a 25-year-old that's like, what the hell is going on? All I was doing was getting, paid few bucks an hour to go pass out flyers. So, and every time you charge up that helicopter, by the way, it's a $25,000 fee just getting it up in the air. And this guy's using it to terrorize individuals, right? And yet, we have this this has been the enlightening part, because I thought the cause we're in was really to remove criminals. I didn't know we're inside this gang warfare, Crips and Bloods type of situation where it's only the Democrat criminals that we go after. And the Republican criminals like Chad Bianco, who has a litany of horrible things, well, he's being pushed as the front-runner candidate in California. And guess what there? He's already done so many dirty deals, so many dirty deeds that they are aware of. Well, it's not the Vem Miller that's going to be able to expose that. It's the card they hold upon him to do their dirty deeds. And should Chad Bianco, misbehave, all of a sudden overnight, he'll become Harvey Weinstein. This is the reality of how it works. So it's not that he hasn't done a litany of crimes that he probably deserves 500 years in jail for. And by the way, there's new horrors coming out very soon for people wanting to pay attention to the crimes of Chad Bianco. It's that the people that are essentially a mechanism. It's an Epstein tool mechanism. I'm not suggesting he was raping young kids. What I'm suggesting is that they got files and files of dirt on him. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, I think it's the same with Adam Schiff. Yep. It's Letitia James. That's why they want to talk about her hairdresser. They want to talk about, signing documents or whatever, but they never really seem to go after these people. And then you are trying to be a responsible citizen. You're a gun owner. The Second Amendment allows you to have these guns legally. You're responsibly alerting law enforcement so that there is no mishap. And next thing you know, your life is virtually destroyed. Can people help you with the legal fees or anything like that, Vem?
It'd be amazing. I'm always appreciative of help. If you go to americahappens.com, there's a donation tab there where you can donate money. Luckily, as much as there's bad guys, there's been good guys that have been very supportive because they know my resume. They know what I'm about. They know the works I've done. They know how a lot of the time I was the first one to take a risk when, like that Thomas Renz piece about Susie Wiles. I mean, that came at a time where Alex Jones was being more or less threatened not to do it. So I was like, you know what, Tom, let's do it, And that's down there somewhere too, which you'll find Thomas Renz's picture.
I think Mindy's going to have to apologize to me for fundraising for this website that she's on.
Yeah. To be frank with you, we haven't, raised a lot on this website, but that's something definitely to be talked about. I didn't know what happened there, but
no, it's all right. I don't mean to distract. You've got an important story here, Vem, and I mean, listen, I am with you on the lawfare aspects. Like I said, obviously we're on different ends of this, but it's interesting. I didn't realize that you hadn't been criminally charged. I don't understand how judges can't. Let me rephrase that. I do understand. This is a pretty dense document here, this dismissal, and I'm sure it hinges on a multitude of specific laws, and I'm not suggesting...
Yeah, because it's part of the fraud and corruption of Chad Bianco. So like I explained, we have very strong state actions, and those state actions are alive. Slander, defamation, the worst of its kind, right? So people that are saying this was dismissed don't understand the law because there's 10 different counts, causes of action within this lawsuit. Now, the federal cause of action hinge upon the body cams, and guess who's hiring the body cams? Because the body cams will show that these police officers did not conduct themselves in a constitutional fashion. The body cams will show that they put me in medical distress, refused medication to me that caused me to pass out inside the car. If they had a camera within that vehicle that I was put in, which was 110 degrees outside, inside that vehicle, it felt like a sauna, maybe 140 degrees for an hour. There's a lot of issues there on a constitutional level. Well,
they wanted you to die.
Bianco refused. Yeah. When Chad Bianco refuses to release those body cameras, That's the reason why the federal action we're having problems with. And so our strategy initially was, hey, they gave me a ticket for these 2 guns. We got to go to court. We're allowed to ask for the release of the body cameras. Well, they refuse 7 times, right? And so now it's like, all right, fine. You guys want this to be dismissed, which tells you how credible those initial accusations were when there's not even, by the way, the Riverside DA, they haven't found anybody within that office that wants to touch the case, because the people realize that this is kryptonite. Nobody wants to ruin their career on clearly what was targeting, what was fraudulent. And so they're like, you guys got to, judge is saying to my lawyer, please apply for a dismissal. Well, once we apply for a dismissal there, guess what? We have the state action. We have the federal action that we've already appealed. We literally appealed within 24 hours. Ethan Behrman works very quickly. And, eventually we're going to get those body cameras, or those body cameras are going to disappear, which I've seen happen many times in such cases, because I believe that it's so incriminating, the body cameras, and it will show federal actions like failure to train your officers, 1983 Monell claims. And this is not what Chad Bianco wants to come out in the middle of his campaign, where he's pretending to be a good guy. He's saying all the right things that have people fooled, but anybody that scratches the surface, goes on my platforms, my X account is filled with videos. I mean, everything. I mean, it's like, forget about my issue. Look at the BLM kneeling, the bribery, the fraud, the financial fraud, the people that have died in his jails. He's had the highest number of jail deaths in the history of California.
Wow.
And you could imagine when his officer sticks somebody that's saying that I'm diabetic inside a vehicle and begging for his medication, and they
oh my
refuse
God,
it,
they wanted you to die.
Causing me to pass out in the car. I mean, you could understand, these guys are not police officers. They're thugs, they're gangsters. And this is somebody that made gangster rap videos for 8 years. Like, I work with people like DMX, Master P, directed a lot of music videos, became really popular in their hip hop world. And the hardcore gangsters of the street, honestly, man, do not hold a finger to these guys. Chad Bianco and his very badly trained police force, which is filled with thugs. There's a lot of great officers in there too, and I've gotten to know a lot of them, and they're horrified with what Chad Bianco's done with that police department, with that sheriff's department. A lot of them have left the state because they were targeted by Chad Bianco. A lot of them there was individuals that were fired on the orders of BLM because they made Facebook posts critical of BLM during a time that Chad Bianco was in bed with BLM. And those guys got fired, and they had to move to another state because they were being so badly targeted. I mean, I gave you the helicopter example where, and by the way, people are like Republican, Democrat. I'm like, guys, you know what? Erase that from your thoughts. This is WWE. It's no more real than wrestling. When Chad Bianco says Rob Bunt is this, that, he's the Attorney General of California. It's all a game, because Rob Bonta is so dirty. Chad Bianco is so dirty. In terms of the real dirt, they just cover it up for each other. Because, hey, if, Rob Bonta was like, you know what, Chad, you're a bad cop, man. You've done a lot of horrible things. I'm going to get you locked up. We're going to prosecute you. Guess what? All of the mortgage fraud and all that crap of Rob Bonta that's been coming out in the last couple of months, all of a sudden, that comes out. So they have enough dirt on each other where they protect each other on the big things that prevent them from going to prison, while targeting individuals like me that are out there trying to figure out this, the ballot fraud situation, trying to follow the orders of our commander-in-chief that has told us years ago that there's, ballot trafficking, there's election fraud. Which is really sad, Jason. It's really sad to put your neck out there, and you're left as a soldier on the field to like bleed to death, even though you've tried to do the good works.
Vem, it's everything you're saying I agree with and have experienced personally on a much lower level. For instance, I was suing the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office, and I didn't have the type of stress and pressure or stakes nearly as high as what you have, but I did invest a lot of time, a lot of money, driving back and forth to Pittsburgh several times to go to court cases, and then Trump wins and he decides he's satisfied with the investigation into Butler, PA. Why should I continue to waste my time, money, resources if he doesn't even care? And in your case, I mean, obviously they did try to kill you and your reputation is on the line. So as I said, the stakes are much higher, but it is quite disappointing. And I don't know, it just, look, I don't ever like to say anything that causes people to lose hope because I think there's always hope, but
Mhm.
it is quite bad, isn't it?
I mean, it's actually really terrible, man. And this has been, I'm a survivalist. Like I don't like stop fighting. It's within me. I come of Armenian background. Our people have been through horrible things because of tyrants that try to tell you you're like less than human, that your women deserve to be raped, that your land deserves to be taken, and really horrible things have happened in our past. And I think because of my background and what's happened to my family, my ancestors, there's something within me that will just not stop fighting. And this is why I educate myself. This is why I learned about law, to really be, other than a bullet or a bomb that tries to kill me, to be as impenetrable as possible against these tyrants. And part of that impenetrability is like, you notice, like we created this brand called Media Assassins to turn lemon into lemonade after I was called an assassin. We gave a name to the work that we've been doing for years, right? Now our next move, by the way, and you're welcome to open this up. It's not a finished website, but we're now creating a third party called the Demtarian Party, which is a combination of JFK Democrats, non-establishment Republicans, independents, and libertarians, Demtarian. And what we currently have at demtarianplatform.com is essentially our beta test of this new party, which at this point, it's a platform of ideas of how you repair this country for we the people, how you address the issues that we're all faced with. Because this direction we're going in is a downward spiral, man. This is going to destroy our
Yeah.
country,
Yep.
And, I have an option here of being like, hey, I'm going to go make reality shows, or hey, I'm going to move to some island. Or we could come up with ideas, turning lemons into lemonade, like we're doing with this Demtarian platform, which is really geared towards bringing together people, getting rid of the red and blue. That's just gangster BS. That's like, and it's the same thing, by the way. It's like if you see your opponent that crossed the tracks, you want to do a drive-by shooting. If that person is crossing your neighborhood, or if that person is a blue and you're a red. That's what our politics has become. That is a great way to enter civil war for anybody that's done videos in Watts, Compton, Harlem, all of which I've done. I've worked in the worst hoods in the country as a music video director. Anybody that wants to look at my portfolio there could see I've done about 100 music videos, worked with some of the toughest gangs out there, worked with the Nation of Islam. And I recognize this what it is. It's like, just like that neighborhood. If you go to Watts, there's a fried chicken place right there. The walls are filled with the victims of drive-by shooting and this gang violence. That's what we're looking at in this country. We're looking at civil war. We're looking at this country falling apart. We're looking at hate and destruction, unless we could get people together. And I'll tell you, my enlightening experience was working with my lawyer, Ethan Behrman, who is, if you look at him, you talk to him, I mean, that he looks like somebody that's of, or mindset is of the hard left. And then you look at my, portfolio, and you think this guy's hard right. And there's, if you ask the media, there's no meeting ground there. They just want us to fight and kill each other, right? Or cause harm to each other. But, you talk to, Ethan Behrman and I talk, and we agree on like everything. I still haven't had a disagreement with him, and he's of Jewish background, Ashkenazi Jew, Orthodox, which, I'm also a man of faith, and there's a lot of parallels there between how he thinks and how I think. And I'm like, dude, like we agree on everything. This whole thing is a construct. It's a total construct. And working with him, working with other individuals that are from the, Democrat side, and that's where I came from, being a Hollywood producer for like 10 years, actually making and producing TV shows. I realize what it is, man. It's a psychological warfare there to divide. That's what the Demtarian platform is about. That's what the Demtarian party is going to be about. Really about, red and blue meat. Let's do common sense, solutions, and let's try to do our best to save this country. And in trying, even though I'm pretty hopeless in terms of the reaction of the outside world, because I know too much about how things really work and the corruptions and the people that run the show, in not trying, it's like almost like a spiritual death,
Yeah.
and
No, that's
if
it.
I'm gonna go out, like Larry Bird says, he when Larry Bird retired, he said, I left everything on that basketball court. I gave it my all. And you saw him in his latter years, his body literally falling apart. He gave it everything. And so that's the way I want to walk away from this game. And then the rest of the world could do whatever the hell they want to.
It's well said. Larry Bird. I used to love that one-on-one video game. Larry Bird and or Dr. J, was it? Yeah, classic. Vem, it's a crazy story. What's going on with you there? Sorry to digress into the realm of 8-bit video games, but hey, this is what it is.
And one of the coolest moments, and I had to buy that jersey, was when he shows up to do the 3-point competition in his warm-up jersey, and with such a level of confidence. Before that, he walked into the locker room and said, who's going to end up number 2, because he knew he was going to win. And I like that, man. That man's shit talking was poetry on another level. One of my favorite players, and he's a good example of somebody out there that's not, he's not playing. He never played. He was there to win. So yeah. That's the warm-up jersey I have in my closet.
Is he still alive? I feel like you never see Larry Bird around anymore.
Yeah. They actually did a press conference with him and Magic Johnson did a press conference recently. He's alive and kicking. He was a great coach too at one point, and I think for health reasons he had to retire from that.
They should do a new version of the video game. So what's next? What's next for Vem Miller? You've got your appeal coming up. And by the way, I would compliment you on what you just said, because I agree with you. Even when things look grim, you can't give up, because you never really know how. I mean, it seems like Chad Bianco and all these people who are against you and the corrupt judges and everything, you just never know when the cracks in the armor are going to give way and the whole thing is going to shatter. So you have to keep charging at that wall, even when it seems like there's no hope. There is still hope.
Hey, I'll tell you, like Freya Christensen, who you just saw on the Media Assassins website, former Judge Freya Christensen. Well, she did some horrible things back in 2019. It took me about 4 years to get her off the bench. She had to, and there's a lot of lies with that. She says she had to retire.
Tell us about that for a second. How did you get a judge off the bench? Because she's an elected judge. She's not a federal judge, obviously.
She's in Canada. No, they're federally selected. I got her off the bench by, and this is where, again, people are like, "Ooh, you lost that lawsuit." I didn't actually lose that lawsuit. It got dismissed. But what happened was, when you put information out there that's in the public domain, searchable by, Pacer, these kind of individuals that are corrupt, they might, I might not be successful in removing them via lawsuit. But once I publish the lawsuit, the facts, the receipts, the exhibits, well, guess what? Corrupt individuals screw over other people. And when they screw over a law firm with 10 high-powered attorneys that are more connected than her, and now those high-powered attorneys go after her, well, she committed her indiscretions against me back in 2019. She did some very horrible things, said that my documentary work was child abuse, used that as a way to alienate me from my children because I was making documentaries that called out family law corruption. My children are very clear that, dad's a great dad, but they made my documentary work into child abuse. Well, I filed a lawsuit against her. This was 2021. In 2022, a big law firm that she screwed over caught notice of my lawsuit, and by August 2024, she was taken off the bench. Now, she lies, and just like, these are classic Chad Bianco characters. She lies, and she said she had long COVID, and that's why she had to retire. Well, the Canadian government lies also and says that she retired because she was always due to retire. But the truth of it is, the Canadian government, and this came around a judge scandal where 3 other judges were removed, August 2025. The truth is that they don't want it to be known how bad of a person she is, because she's really a kidnapper and trafficker of children, and she should be in jail. So they don't want to open those can of worms, which, by the way, is one of the can of worms that I'm opening up right now. So they're not going to escape that. The idea is to be relentless. The idea is to, frankly, embrace pain. People are scared of pain. Like, I'm at a point in my life where pain is actually, it's not that bad of a thing, man. There's ways to navigate the pain to make you your fuel, to give you fuel and to give you focus and determination that's unbeatable. And so I tell people honestly, man, the only thing that could take me out is a bullet at this point, or a bomb, or some kind of physical murder of my this flesh suit that we're wearing. But in terms of, lawfare, in terms of, censoring me, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, you know what? There's always ways if there's determination out there. And that's kind of where I'm at this point, because I'm not down with giving up. That's just the, death of soul. I've seen what happens with individuals, especially in the family law world, where they give up and get into drinking and other bad habits. Suicide on the installment plan, I call it. And that's just not, I enjoy the fight, man. I enjoy the fight, and I'm willing to go endless rounds.
You're an interesting guy, Vem. I mean, this has been a really interesting conversation. You bring up something that I wanted to ask you about censorship, of course. You're at not Vem Miller on X, and your following is much lower than I would expect it to be, given your background and the publicity that you've had, both good and bad. Have you been canceled from X? And this is, I see this is only since 2023.
Yeah, so I was banned from X back in 2021 because I was speaking out about the election fraud questions of 2020, the stolen election of 2020, speaking out about, myriad of topics, COVID-19. So they got rid of my Vem Miller account, which incidentally, I never got back in the quote unquote general amnesty that was supposed to happen, which is very interesting because a lot of people got general amnesty, but I guess I was too much freedom of speeching to get my account back. So it's kind of a joke, not Vem Miller. I'm in hiding. And subsequent to that, my account, we've done an audit. I'm friends with individuals that are tech, aficionados. And when we do an audit on my X account, which it's hard to do unless you know some techie people, but fortunately, I know some really good techie people. Well, guess what? There's been labels placed on my not Vem Miller account that are, pretty significant. You know what I mean? I think Osama bin Laden would have had more, reach than I do right now. And that's why I posted that chart, because it shows clearly that, I'm spiking throughout January, February. Well, Chad Bianco declares on February 17. I have a few more spikes. There's that little big spike there. And then it's like my social media is dead. You know what I mean? And that's Chad Bianco, by the way. That's Chad Bianco. There's nobody else that would have done that, because there were other labels on my account are not that much, but Chad Bianco, having the powers of sheriff, I've already given you examples of how he misuses his power, and Rob Bonta, the attorney general, lets him get away with bloody murder because they're both scumbags. And so, he's been able to make some calls. He's been able to use his, campaign weaponized to basically cut down my voice, cut out my tongue on social media. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. The other option would be to frankly become their bitch, and that's not an option,
And how do you feel when you hear Elon Musk say that he's going to bring back freedom of speech to social media and all that? When, look, I agree with what you're saying. I've seen similar things. It doesn't make sense how certain people gain huge amount of reach and other things are suppressed. It seems quite manipulated.
Yeah, man, I don't know what's going on there. There's people that I know in the tech world that actually have worked in these corporate offices, and they're like, look, it could be like Elon's doing his one thing. We see it with Trump. Trump sends out one message, and then we wait for Pam Bondi to do something else, So it could be that Elon Musk sincerely, wants freedom of speech, but he has a bunch of communist Marxists that are the ones that are putting these labels on. It's once you're in there, it's not hard to put labels on somebody's social media to blacklist them and do the kind of things that would result in my social media flatlining.
Yeah, and certainly
You
Elon
know,
Musk
one
is
other thing.
not auditing every single X channel. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one other thing, my faith in God, frankly, because I always say I played an audience of one. That's my ultimate goal. Like, I think it's clear what's happening in this world. There's a lot of truth to this idea that this is the demons realm, where the demons are in control, where the evil people are in control. So I'm not necessarily playing this game for to any audience, like not Donald Trump, not Elon Musk. There's a higher power out there. I sincerely 100% believe that there is a God. I believe that once we die, there's a much better place for us to go to, and that really dictates my actions over here. Because look, I would love for Donald Trump and Elon Musk to take note of all the hard work and passion I put into trying to fix this country and do what's right. But that's not necessarily my top goal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad that we've been having this conversation, Vim. I got to say, I was a little worried about the whole Mindy connection. She and I got off on a very bad foot. Hopefully we can resolve that. But I'm really impressed with everything that you've said today. And I mean, you've been through hell for sure. Like I said at the top of our conversation, I had heard about your story, but I just didn't know any of these details. And it is quite challenging to have someone politically powerful. And I mean, this guy, Chad Bianco, he sounds like a really bad guy. And he's just one of many people like that in the government, whether it's federal judges or, sheriffs. It's a daunting prospect for a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of people listening I can see it right here. People are admiring what you're saying. Well said, etc. So, we're just about out of time, but I think you and I should have, more conversations in the future. Is there anything you want to say that we haven't covered yet?
Man, I'd love to interview you. When I looked at your background, and what you've done, I mean, we've traveled similar paths, and
Yeah.
you're also a very interesting person. And I
Thank you.
know, look, I know what kind of person you are. I mean, we have the talent and skill set where we could be doing a lot of other things in the field of media and entertainment. And I just respect people that put themselves on the line, go through the kind of lawfare you've gone through. It's there's a for people that don't understand, there's an automatic connection between individuals like us, because we know the dark roads you have to travel, the pain and suffering you have to go through, to do what we do. And I just find myself easily connected to individuals that are in the fight.
Well, thank you for saying that. One last thing I wanted to ask you, and if this is too personal, feel free not to answer, but you spoke about how they attacked you in family court and all of that. Have you been able to stay in touch with your kids? Is everything all right there?
No, that's one of the really effed up things about this, man, is that I had contact with my children and a very just kind of I married a person that was very wealthy, and it didn't work out. And at the end of that, I just wanted to be a dad to my children. She got really nasty, took the kids to Europe. I was, through fighting, I was able to reestablish contact. And then when I was called the third assassin, that was used as a weapon against me. In Europe, guns are shunned upon, so I didn't have to necessarily be a assassin accused of being assassination. It was enough that I carry guns for me to be a danger with the children. And when I say carry guns, I mean they're in my trunk lawfully most of the time, but that was used as a weapon. So subsequent to the false accusations, I basically lost all contact with my children, and just waiting for them to, I don't know what I do there, honestly. Part of these wars that I'm fighting against these corrupt judges, like that Freya Christensen individual, there was 2 Canadian judges that were a part of that, because I was doing a production in Canada at the time when this went on. We were there only temporarily. This complete woke psychopath of a judge named Jasmine Akbarali really hijacked the situation, did a bunch of unlawful things. resulted in shipping off my kids, trafficking them to the United Kingdom.
Wow.
Then came this Freya Christensen person that had to justify that nonsense by saying, because they couldn't, there's no child abuse, so they had to make my documentaries into child abuse because I was going after Akbar Ali, Jasmine Akbar Ali, corrupt judge in Canada. Well, that's when, that was hard. That took me a while to even just formulate myself back as a person. And then I started going after them. And thus far, there's a total of 4 judges involved in that corrupt transaction, 2 main ones. I've taken out one of the main ones. Jasmine Akbar Ali remains, and she's on my legal hit list. She will be eventually removed and embarrassed, humiliated. Hopefully I could land her in jail. That's that one, the psycho over there. But yeah, that's what happened there. And, because the kids are in a foreign country, it's not as easy as it would be here. It doesn't help that they're in Europe, where there's now hatred towards Trump, MAGA. You look at my profile, and probably almost 100% of those Fabian Society judges in the UK, which that's an interesting topic too that we can maybe discuss offline. But they all come from the Fabian Society, and those guys, I'm all the things that they hate. So, it's like at this point, it is what it is. But I'm certainly going to make sure that I remove Jasmine Akbar Ali. Already removed one of the judges in the UK that followed the lead of Jasmine Akbar Ali. Now there's 2 judges and 1 social worker left.
Wow. It's an incredible story, Vem. I'm sorry to bring up all that obviously difficult stuff. The Fabian Society is bad news for sure. And I was going to say it's almost like, but it's not almost, it definitely is. These judges are cruel people who I think enjoy exerting this power over someone like you. And, they relish this destruction of your life because, look, I'm not trying to put salt on a wound, but this is time. And as it passes, even if you are able to restore in the future, you've lost something that you can't get back. And I know on some level, at least, how that feels.
The bad news is when they meet and, somebody that rather than, getting into the suicide on the installment plan of self-destruction actually survives that and now enjoys their destruction. And that's where I'm at. I truly do enjoy, people like partying and sex and drugs, whatever. My greatest elations come from knocking these people out, humiliating, destroying them. And I wish other men and women would take my example and
in a legal context,
more.
Of course. In a legal context,
figuratively speaking. These are all law. Yeah. I don't do anything. I don't have to do anything, in terms of illegal and violence. Everything I speak about is lawful. But yeah, they're these people that run on ego. They think that fear is a tool. They don't understand people like me, but, when I speak about their destruction, it's really about destroying their egos, destroying their position. And you'll be surprised. Like once, Freya Christensen, she was like a big lady. Like you should look at her now. She's shriveled into a raisin, and these people like hang upon their titles. When they lose their titles, it's like a spiritual death for them. So it's a fun process.
I've experienced it firsthand in court. These people who are just so cruel, and it's very upsetting because, they're emboldened and empowered by the government that is expected to be by us, for us, and of us, and yet they lord over us like they're some kind of superior being. So I want to thank you, Vem, for contacting me. I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm pleased to meet you. And I want to remind everybody to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If you've just heard about Vem for the first time, don't forget to follow him on X at not Vem Miller, and you can learn more about him there and his fight. Vem, keep it up.